I am the founder and CEO of Queen Mary, an award-winning edible brand in Los Angeles. So I got my start actually.
Our producer's a little bit of a queen himself.
I like it, thank you. I got my start in cannabis actually as a delivery driver. I started back in 2016 delivering medical cannabis door to door. I found that most of my clients I were delivering to were female. So I kind of got this idea that I wanted to start a delivery service for women. However, as we'll get into it, the licensing structure and everything that changed in California took place a little different. So I ended up pivoting and starting the brand Queen Mary. But it is a wellness brand designed for women and, PTSD people looking wellness. The whole idea is it's designed to be a natural alternative to addictive prescriptions. So we have a morning, noon, and night regimen, starting with a daily tincture with coffee, THCV, and vitamin D, a maintenance gummy with rhodiola and B12, and a sleep aid gummy with linalool and CBN. It's all vegan, fast-acting, sugar-free, gluten-free, all the wonderful good stuff to make it healthy for you.
You did that without a script, too.
Yeah.
How cool is that screen, right?
Okay, we are back with another episode of Media Unshackled featuring the state of the states and giving a basic overview of the market structure and how things work within each of our jurisdictions. Dimitri Downing again here with
Max Uhas from Dope SEO.
And we have brought to you the big state of California experts, the big experts. There's a lot of California people we could have picked from, but we picked Jared and Tiana because they are awesome. And they are here to give you an update, a preview, a little bit of history of how California works, what's happening over there. As we all know, the interstate jurisdiction by jurisdiction market exploration is difficult for anyone doing business development of any sort in cannabis. So this whole show is about giving people a little bit of a taste as to what is going on in that market, how the licensing structure works. But first, we want to talk about a little bit about each of you guys, just for a minute or two. Your history in the cannabis industry, your companies, current events, current projects. Go ahead, Tiana.
Yes, hi. My name
Ladies
is
first.
Tiana Woodruff. I am the founder and CEO of Queen Mary, an award-winning edible brand in Los Angeles. So I got my start actually.
Our producer's a little bit of a queen himself.
I like it, thank you. I got my start in cannabis actually as a delivery driver. I started back in 2016 delivering medical cannabis door to door. I found that most of my clients I were delivering to were female. So I kind of got this idea that I wanted to start a delivery service for women. However, as we'll get into it, the licensing structure and everything that changed in California took place a little different. So I ended up pivoting and starting the brand Queen Mary. But it is a wellness brand designed for women and, PTSD people looking wellness. The whole idea is it's designed to be a natural alternative to addictive prescriptions. So we have a morning, noon, and night regimen, starting with a daily tincture with coffee, THCV, and vitamin D, a maintenance gummy with rhodiola and B12, and a sleep aid gummy with linalool and CBN. It's all vegan, fast-acting, sugar-free, gluten-free, all the wonderful good stuff to make it healtky for you.
You did that without a script, too.
Yeah,
that was beautiful.
good.
Like,
Thank you.
You've been navigating we're going to talk about how you had to navigate the operational regulatory structure of cannabis in California. We're going to get off that in a second, but first let's get Jared introduced. And the man with the second best hair in.
Oh, nice. I will take the silver star for that. That's awesome.
Okay.
Jared Kylo. This is my 21st year in the cannabis space, mostly in California. A retailer to start, cultivator throughout most of the space as a retailer, just to try to vertically integrate as much as possible. A lot of regulatory work. I got to sit on the medical marijuana task force under Gavin Newsom in San Francisco about 13 years ago, and we got to understand how government could actually support cannabis, best business practices, and standard operating procedures. Moved from San Francisco, took over a dispensary in Los Angeles called The Higher Path. Been there for 10 years and started a trade organization called the United Cannabis Business Association. I got most of the retailers together. We changed some of the laws in Los Angeles, got a ballot initiative qualified, which I'll tell you that cost a couple $1 million.
Right.
So to qualify something in Los Angeles, you got to get 100,000 signatures, and every signature is like $12 during like election campaigns. So we've, as an organization, have kind of like seen a lot of retailers through the pathway. And now as an organization, we mostly work on state policy. So we write tax bills and stuff. So Last year, I think we ran 4 tax bills, something for consumption lounges, catering licenses. We did a tax reduction bill. So nowadays, my job is mostly lobbying and writing regulations and testifying in front of the Senate and the Assembly and working with regulators. So that's kind of what I've done for 20 years.
Wow, you're big dog.
Just me, or are you a little intimidated? I'm a little intimidated.
I'm like the dumbest guy
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the room right
I
now.
know,
I'm like,
I
what do you?
know.
I help people sell weed. Like, you know.
Help me, Lord, for I'm inadequate.
Yeah, I was like, good
Wow.
God, it's another one that just makes me feel like a
Yeah, we
moron.
look at MJ
But
BizCon
thank
as
you
the
so much.
courtroom. We're like the judge. The audience is like the jury, and we now have you qualified as an expert.
You have
Expert
beyond
witness.
you're definitely qualified as an expert.
Absolutely.
All right, well, you know nuances that are beyond much of what we're going to get into in this
problem.
show. We're going to start basically with like a little history. When did California go medicinal?
Yeah,
When let's go back to the beginning. I know there was plenty of cannabis prior to the first medicinal initiative.
Yeah, we're back to Prop 215. I think we're at 28 or 29 years ago.
Yeah.
When we first passed, pretty much it was just for patients. And, the industry bloomed quite a bit because there wasn't a lot of rules. It was kind of just like a 2-page bill that said, if you're a patient, you should be able to access cannabis. And a lot of it came from a lot of the people inside of San Francisco, AIDS patients, cancer patients. It really was the pivotal point for patients to be able to get real access and not just, a normal drugstore dealer. But then it expanded quite a bit. And you had like over 10,000 dispensaries in California pre-Prop 64's passage. So there was quite a diversity in
And what year did Prop 64 pass?
it passed in
2018,
2016, but it didn't get implemented until 2018.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we go back to all these dispensaries that were, give a little bit people a little history. All these dispensaries opened up between 1999 and 2016.
Yeah, there was quite a lot of demand. I mean, if you look in the city of Los Angeles, there was over 1,000 dispensaries. They did kind of have some regulations there, but there was only about 180 of them that were legal under the laws that were there currently, but there wasn't a lot of enforcement. No one really knew how to enforce against patients and doctors' recommendations and who was growing for who.
Right.
So
Right.
that gray area left a lot of room for like growth, and that growth like really exploded quite quickly. And then most of it was the invisible hand of just capitalism. Good brands made it to stores, and
Good capitalism. I love that term.
I'm a big
good
fan
capitalism.
of the invisible hand.
Yeah,
Well,
I gotta say that San Francisco. I was there when the Giants won the World Series, and it was right after that. And they were like, "Oh, you've never been here? Welcome to San Francisco." And somebody passed me a joint. It was literally. I was just like, I love this place.
I've arrived.
Yeah, I have arrived.
So, and I want to get a little bit talk about the history. Then we're going to talk about what it's like to actually operate within this framework, and you also operate as well. But we're getting the history out of you. So, 2016, there was this transition into Prop 64.
Yeah, Prop 64 was this push to say, let's get away from the fact that doctors are the only way to access cannabis. We knew that there was this kind of bifurcation of the industry. One was medical, one was recreational, and I don't think anyone really knew how much one overtook the other. So
What the difference was, right? I mean,
there really wasn't back then.
Right.
Then it was like, a doctor's note could be for anxiety or it could be for cancer. And
Right.
so I think in a lot of regulators' eyes, they were like, let's stop pretending and let's start actually just doing something. And the pretending was, we had like 50 different pot doctors that could, for $25, give you a recommendation.
Remembering all this.
Yeah.
It undermined it undermined like the kind of the push that this is really medical, because there were this kind of like these mills to just give out prescriptions.
It was
So-
like a pseudo opioid thing when it was like, well, just go to a pain clinic. It's like, oh yeah, you're hurt.
You're hurt, of course.
Here you go. Yeah, take this and go with it. Yeah, there weren't any like real pre-qualifying conditions, or there was no research, or there was no like, let me educate you on anything. It was like, oh, you want weed? Cool, we'll just give you weed.
Well, there were those some that, you do come from that medical side, and you were trying to provide for patients, especially in the city of San Francisco. Like, you were almost you had to provide for patients.
Right.
That was the expectation. And there was the other people who were coming in on the coattails of those expectations with, let's do this recreationally as much as we could. And so that expansion really kind of, I think, leaked into a lot of other cities. It really kind of pushed quickly. And then you did get to see the forefront of patients getting that kind of access, and you did see more and more doctors giving recommendations, whether they were good or bad. They were recommendations from a doctor to a patient, and that meant something. And I think we've gotten a little bit away from that. Once Prop 64 passed, it was like, medical isn't necessary. And they didn't leave a lot of incentives inside the medical kind of access for people to continue to be medical patients. So once Prop 64 came through, they're like, I don't need a $40 barrier to entry to go to a pot doctor to get a recommendation if all I have to do is bring my driver's license. So the fact that we went from 100% of our sales being medical to where mostly where the industry now is, we're looking at about 5% of the overall revenue is generated from medical recommendations. So that has been the gap now that has been kind of a chasm that is now between medical and recreational, even though most people still self-identify as medically getting products, but they don't need that recommendation. So we've lost a little bit of data.
And are there what's the taxation difference between for medical patients versus adult use patients? Is there any?
Only locally. At the state level, you're pretty much 15% excise tax on gross receipts. You still have to pay your standard sales tax unless you're one of 2,100 people in California. 2,100 people out of 38 million got an MMIC card, which is a state kind of card that you go through your county health department and you bring them your doctor's recommendation. They charge you a bunch of money. They double check what supposedly your doctor gave you. Then they give you a card, and that card now gives you the opportunity to not have to pay sales tax. So there is one incentive at the state level for those 2,100 people.
But it's literally 2,000 people that don't pay.
How did that happen? I mean, who grandfathered that in? Who came up with that legislation? Where did that MMIC thing come from?
It was part of Prop 64 in an effort to give patients an opportunity to pay less. So it was that incentive program to say, no prescription drugs are taxed with sales tax. So every time you go to the pharmacy, there's no sales tax on any prescription drug. So we were trying to follow that model as a state, but we kind of like pushed everyone into this weird corner where you give up some of your civil rights by being on a list for cannabis consumption. Like now, if you're a Class A driver, you cannot cross state lines. You could lose your license.
Whoa, really?
You can't buy guns. You can't buy ammunition. So all of a sudden, this became more or less, it was like, do you want to give up your civil rights to save 9.5% sales tax? And a lot of people said, I'm unwilling.
And that patient technically is still paying higher taxes because they're paying all the taxes are paid at the different levels of the supply chain in California, right?
You're talking 45 to 50% just taxation just to the consumer.
Yeah. So and then that's still going to the patients because they're only getting, what is that noise?
It's the catering guy with the catering trays.
No, it's the F1 cars around us.
That's way cooler.
So let's get a little bit about the licensing structure as it exists post 64. How hard is it to get a state license? Is it happening at the local level? What's happening at the local level? What's it like to get a retail license, a manufacturing license, cultivation license in California? I know it's a big subject, but if you just touch on it a bit. And then we're going to talk about what it's like to operate within that world.
And hey, I had to apply for a license too, so I know those processes.
So you know this game. Yeah, feel free.
The problem is we went with a dual licensing system. You have to get local approval and state approval. And because of that, there's kind of like this, everyone wanted to kind of create their own rules because they wanted to collect their own taxes. So it became these little siloed versions of every municipality saying, how are we going to make the most of this? Now, in the city of Los Angeles, they made the most of it by creating a 10% gross receipts tax, which is the highest in the state for all, retail sales. Now, to get a local license, some places it took 2 or 3 years because the system was being set up. A lot of people had to go to ballot initiatives inside their own city to get, because these are taxes now, so you got to get 2/3 vote from the constituents of the area. So every little city turned into their own little pocket, and then you had to go through city council, neighborhood councils to get a local license. Then you had to go through the state and CEQA and some other items there. So we have this
for retail, manufacturing, and cultivation.
No, this is retail.
This is just retail.
Yeah.
But
Boy.
Manufacturing and stuff is still kind of in the same place, and so is like the cultivation side. I mean, now you have to do river and stream assessments. You have to do you got Fish and Wildlife. There are 17 government agencies that oversee cannabis licensing throughout the supply chain.
And LA doesn't even
Okay.
have a cultivation license anymore. Like that's not even an option when you go into the Los Angeles.
They're like, we're done.
On their
Cultivate.
website,
You can
cultivation
cultivate
licenses
Los
are not
Angeles.
available in the
Death
city
by
of Los in
1,000
the county of
cuts.
Los Angeles.
So let's
No.
talk about your journey as someone who actually said, I'm going to do Queen Mary. That was your first salvo into a plant touching ownership kind of business, right?
Yeah, so
you said,
you actually
I'm
just
in.
started.
You looked around, you called
Little
Jared.
bit,
Jared said,
little- yeah. Actually, what happened was with the licensing thing. So I thought I literally didn't understand that you had to go through the city and through the state municipalities. So I was so green at the time as being just a delivery driver in the medical during the medical days.
First off,
When
good
Prop
for you
60
going for it.
Yeah.
Thank
Boom.
you.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like you stepped up. You were like, I'm leveling up.
I'm leveling up. So after
Huge.
Prop
Here,
64
I'm eating the
hit,
mushroom.
like January 1st when it went into effect in 2018, I went right to the DCC website. Like I applied for my license. I put in the application. I put the checklist and said, good. So then they emailed me back like a week or two later and they're like, everything looks great. However, where is your business license to do business in your city? And I'm like, here, my business license. As I just applied for a regular
going, no.
a business license.
Go keep talking.
Okay.
I'm about to say, when
Go
you're
ahead.
done, I'll say what I'm going to say. You are the reason why META, by Dimitri Downing, META has no official position, is strongly against licensing caps. Because you took your skills and your knowledge and you did it.
Yeah.
Licensing caps hinder people from doing that.
doing anything. It was hard
Right.
because that's what happened. I went to it and then I went to they were like, there's got to be a cannabis office in your city. And I was like, okay. So I researched and found out Los Angeles has the DCR. And so I went to the DCR, was like, I applied at the state. I need some sort of license with you. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that yet. But we do have this program called social equity. If you qualify, here's the criteria. So I read through it. It was like, all right. So I applied for social equity, got that status. It took about 2 months through their system. They only opened the window for like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Then they closed it. And then 3 weeks later is when they opened it up for licensing. Well, I
This is
didn't
retail
realize
manufacturing
this
license.
is retail
Okay.
because retail was like all anyone really wanted at the time.
Right.
It was like we're going to do the first, recreational stores in Los Angeles, one of the biggest municipalities in the country, right? So when I applied, they said the first 100, they're giving out 100 licenses, first come, first serve. What happened was you had to have your property attached to it already. You already had to have your space leased, your location that they could approve it. So here I am. I'm like, all right, I got 1 month during this application window to put stuff in. So I'm running around town trying to find and get a lease and everything, not knowing what's going on in the back end, by the way, because I didn't know anybody. So I'm like so excited, get this lease signed, and like at the 11th hour, turn in my application before the window closes. So happy that like I got my location, I'm ready to go, I'm doing this on my own. And then, well, my whole world fell apart. Like everything came
Yeah.
crashing down because I found out like right after that I never stood a chance. When they opened that application service window, they had over 250 applications in the first like 20 minutes of like the system was crashing. Like it was insane. It ended up being, long story short, turning out that people sued the city in audit
Yeah.
because people actually got into the system before the 10 a.m. opening, and there was applications that went in before, and like it was a mess. And so like out of the application numbers, they're going first come first serve. They're giving 100 licenses in all of Los Angeles County. I'm number like 867. I didn't stand a chance. I was just like,
good
whatever,
luck, right?
nothing.
Yeah.
And then we audited the city a little later. The city decided to give another 100 licenses to like offset what they did. But the way they did that was they were going in line in order. So the way they did these 100 licenses was once you put your stuff in, they looked at, we have a law, like you have to be 700 feet from the dispensary. But you had no idea if the dispensary was leasing the place across the street
Right.
because they weren't open yet.
Right.
So it was first come, first serve. Who put that application in first? And then, so let's say I put one in, but someone put one in across the street, like 2 hours before me. They got it, and I was knocked out of the whole race.
No,
because I
without
couldn't
even knowing,
not
like
even
you were
knowing.
automatically
So
disqualified.
that's what they did with the next 100 is they went back in line to those that were skipped, got first priority, and then the next 100 people. However, I still wasn't part of that, so I was like, I guess this, hanging this thing up, I'm not doing it. And then I kind of came across I love the associations. I came across a nonprofit group called Our Academy, Our Dream. It was a 20-week cohort learning all about the cannabis industry, accounting, finance, attorneys, contracts. And then I learned that I did not need a license to start
We
a
do that kind of
brand.
stuff
Yeah.
So I literally started Queen Mary as a brand. I came with the idea, did the formulation of products, all of this during this 20-week cohort, and then I launched a brand on my own and white labeled it.
So what was the process for getting your brand properly licensed? What was that?
So that license came later. So what happened is I actually operated my license for a year, my brand for almost 2 years, until I won a lottery license for social equity in the very last licensing round they did last December. So right now I'm in the process of opening my own dispensary after all of that. So it's really been a great thing. I've had a lot of hurdles though. I mean, I have lost 2 properties in this process, $40,000 with one in Westwood, another one in North Hollywood that pulled out on me. And here I am right now at the last minute. I have to they gave 1 year. So the people that won the first 2 years, some of them still don't have licenses, by the way. Those first 200, there's like 68 operational licenses, and the rest of them are just sitting there.
Floaters.
But this last round that they did to us, they gave us a deadline of 1 year. So mine expires December 8th because that's when I won last year.
Oh,
so
damn.
I'm over here fighting a deadline, trying to get this store open and get all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. So it's been a process. It's been crazy. I mean, I've been, through swam with the sharks, trying to get investors, talking to VC capitalists. And the sad thing about social equity in Los Angeles is, they only allow us to have one license. And we're learning that you need multiple stores to make money. A one-off store does not make money on its own very well. So unless you're established and you've been around for a while. And so they're forcing a lot of social equity applicants to partner with these bad contracts and these big, chains, because the chains right now in Los Angeles, if you're not social equity, they're not giving any retail licenses until 2025. So for 5 years, they locked in social equity only. But it's been such a mess. And then this year, don't get me started on what they started with the provisional licensing. So in Los Angeles and the state of California, every dispensary, since they've done Prop 64 in 2018, has been operating on what we call a provisional license, which means it's not an annual. It is something that has to be renewed. It's a temporary license. Nobody had a solid license. So when the state decided in March of this year,
permit?
yes, basically, they decided, they were like, we're sundowning it. By March 31st, they actually had it in phases. There are no more. It has to go to annual. Well, the city of Los Angeles didn't even have a program for annual. So here I am, just want a license in the middle of it being transferred from annual to provisional, and there's no application. So it was, for lack of a better word, a shit show. And I'm one of the few of those 100. There's probably going to be 6 licenses of the 100 awarded that are actually going to stand up.
Jared, what does all this stuff make you think?
Well, I've been in Los Angeles for 10 years and dealing with the city council and even trying to write the Measure M was something we passed in Los Angeles, and we had 82% voter approval of this cannabis bill. And so we thought we were doing the right thing. We were establishing 180 existing previously issued licensed retailers to be priority, and then everything else, growth from there, was going to be a social equity license, but no one knew how to describe it, no one knew how to define it, no one knew how to not violate Prop 19, which is like, anti-discrimination laws. So if you just give licenses to someone of color, then you're actually doing discrimination. So they don't allow that kind of commerce. So trying to tiptoe around the language and still provide licenses for people who were disenfranchised by the war on drugs has been a problem the whole country is falling into, because we keep trying to find a way to give back to the to those communities that didn't get any institutional wealth, but they went to jail for most of the same things we're now licensed for.
Right. They probably know how to do it better than a lot of the people coming in.
Oh, for sure.
Well, I think the free market, this is like a testament as to why we should have a free market. But that's a whole other issue. I'm not a fan of Drug War 2.0 or Prohibition 2.0. None of it makes sense. Civil criminal sanctions, the whole thing's nonsense. We don't need to get into that. But one of the things is that we are constrained by time. So our audience now knows that if they go to the association, lots of people like yourself, filled with knowledge, information, willing to share and help other people.
Yeah, we're mostly retailers. 2/3 of our voting members have to have a retail license. That way we represent retail as a priority. It's not the only license. Almost every retailer has multiple licenses. So you come in and you learn a lot about how to run a business. You've got multiple owners there who have been running cannabis dispensaries in Los Angeles and throughout the state for 10, 15 years. So there's a lot of experience to say, here's how we can help. Then you get resources like lawyers and accountants who already know how to do 280E and know how to kind of file your taxes for you. So a lot of ways of becoming a member of UCBA is really getting first information about regulatory changes and legislation, and then best business practices. And then you're also in a community where you can share information, share products, and if you produce something, being able to have another retailer sell it for you takes away the cost of trying to find everyone to buy your product. So it's just kind of a little network that we support each other.
Awesome. Well, California is a massive adventure in and of itself. So I appreciate you being on our show so people know who you are, that you exist, and they can reach out to you for more guidance. And yourself as well. Are you available to be?
Absolutely. You know, I just did
A
a talk
guide?
earlier, like yesterday. I'm here to help as many the people of color and social equity. You know, I know the grit, I know the nitty gritty, who to talk to, who to avoid. So any questions, I'm always available. Please email me. You
That's
can reach
what's
me
up.
at tiana@queenmarybrand.com. You know, I'm free. I'm here to give advice and all and help and get in the trenches with you and fight for this plant that we need available to everybody.
Well, I'm sorry we don't have time to get all the. I mean, there's so much to learn about California.
Yeah, I
Right.
feel like we can do 3 hours at least, and
Yeah.
just like not even get into that'd be part one.
The most important thing, though, is like if I need something in California, I can call the two of you, and so can any member of our audience. So we appreciate you guys being on the show. Enjoy your MJ BizCon,
Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck in California. And for Queen Mary, you have a brand that you're.
The Higher Path and the Blueprint Group, which is a lobbying group. So those are the two that are probably, and UCBA is the trade organization.
His dispensary is amazing, by the way. It's over on Ventura. It's in Sherman Oaks. He's not talking about Higher Path, but it's an amazing dispensary.
Well, but it's a
Thank you.
national industry, it's a global industry, and Queen Mary as a brand will
We're
migrate out of
we're
California.
multi-state now. Yeah, we're California, Colorado,
Right.
New Mexico,
There you go.
and as of last night, we might be in Canada. We met some great partners there, and in Oregon next.
Congratulations.
So we're expanding.
That's
so
awesome.
Queen Mary, I own 100% of my brand, bootstrapping it every step of the way.
Good soup.
Yeah, so we're Jared and I are going to start a brand called Eeyore Kush, and we're going to push it across the
Love
globe.
it.
It's been another episode of Meat on Shackle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.